Welcome to the So That's Why podcast, where we unpack the science behind everyday questions. I'm Jen.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Matt.
So here's a question that has probably haunted most of us at one point. Why do we obsess over hitting 10,000 steps every day? Like, I've literally paced around my living room at 11 p.m. just to reach that magic number on my watch.
And you know what? I'm not surprised. But I've been there, right? That's what I do too. You know, you get this sort of collective panic, don't you, when your watch shows 9,847 steps before bedtime, and so you get off, don't you? You sort of do.
It's so true. Like, it's 10,000 steps required, not 9,000, not 11,000, 10,000 or you fail, like some kind of Squid Games challenge.
And here's what's funny. Our bodies didn't come with a built-in step counter, yet we've all accepted this target as if it's some kind of biological law.
Yeah. And the irony is brilliant, right? In the sense that we've created technology that means we're more sedentary, right? Like computers. So then we buy technology to tell us that we're not moving enough. And so we've literally invented the problem and then invented a solution to sell back to ourselves.
Yeah, genius. But I promise you, the origin of the 10,000 step thing will not be what you expect. It involves a Tokyo Olympics, a clever marketing team from Japan, and a number that looks like a walking person.
What? A number that looks like a walking person?
I know. But before we get to that, it's vital we talk about the huge benefits of walking for health in the first place. So there was a 2025 study published in the Lancet that analysed data from all over the world with 160,000 adults. And it found that people walking at least 7,000 steps per day showed a 25% reduction in cardiovascular disease risk. But more than that, there's a 38% reduction in dementia and a 22% reduction in depression. And that was compared to people not just with a sedentary lifestyle, but people already averaging 2,000 steps per day.
Which explains why I felt like both my body and brain were deteriorating in lockdown, because I was basically doing a triangle like everybody else between my bed, my desk, my fridge, probably getting about 47 steps a day.
Yeah, well, that's real, right? That's real. And the difference between sedentary and what is moderately active isn't just about your waistline, although for me that's important. It's also about, and it's becoming more important, this, whether I can remember where I left my keys as I'm approaching 70 in quite a long distant future.
Exactly. It's so important as we get older. And like research has shown that even just a 1,000 step daily increase, it correlates with a 15% reduction in all-cause mortality risk. So obviously it's massive because as anyone with a fitness watch will tell you, like 1,000 steps, it's not that far. It's half a mile?
So movement matters. We all knew that. But why have we latched on to 10,000 as if it's written in stone?
Okay. I promised you a link to the Tokyo Olympics, which were back in 1964. So here goes. So there's a company called Yamasa Tokai Kiki. I won't say that twice. And they developed one of the first commercial pedometers or step counters, and they called it the Manpo-kei.
And the Manpo-kei translates to?
You guessed it, the 10,000 step meter. So the 10,000 number was chosen for marketing reasons. Plus the number 10,000 holds like Japanese cultural significance as a symbol of long life and prosperity too.
So our entire fitness culture then is based on what a Japanese character looked like. So it looks like somebody walking. Feels a little bit like, let's decide to eat 8 meals a day because that's the shape of a snowman.
But someone must have done some science, right? They didn't just pull it completely out of thin air.
No, I mean, it is a good number, let's be honest, to start with. But yeah, there was an academic at Kyushu University in Japan, and he was worried that Japanese people were adopting sedentary, he called it American lifestyles. That was his words, not mine. So what he calculated that was increasing your daily steps from 4,000 to 10,000 would burn approximately 500 extra calories, so helping people to maintain their weight. So that's got a bit of science behind it too.
So it was basically one guy with a calculator being like, yeah, 10,000 sounds good. And then a marketing team were already printing pedometers.
Yeah, pretty much. But it's catchy, it's memorable, and it's a nice round number and it's happened to stick.
Yeah, it must have, because here we are, 60 years later, and we're still aiming for the magic 10,000 steps.
That's it. But interestingly, like when researchers actually started studying step counts and health outcomes associated with them, like decades later, they found something quite interesting.
What, that 10,000's wrong?
Not wrong, but not necessarily right either. So there was a major study, like a huge study, with 160,000 older women, and they found that taking just 4,400 steps, I think it was, a day had this like 40% reduction in mortality risk compared to those taking only 2,000 or 2,500 steps. But that same study also found those benefits appear to plateau at approximately 7,500 steps. So what we're saying is, it's not just a case of the more the better forever. There is a limit over and above which it doesn't really benefit you anymore.
Although I'm guessing it's more complicated than that. So there's got to be individual variation, because that's how biology works, right?
And that's it. And that's why, these round numbers are useful in general, but not always right, because it's not always ideal to have this same aim for everybody. It's got to be individual. And, it turns out that optimum step counts vary dramatically based on age. So for adults over 60, benefits typically plateau at 8,000 to 10,000 steps. But for those 60 and over, it's actually a little bit less. So those maximum benefits are about 6,000 to 8,000 steps.
So I guess, your grandparents are right then, aren't they, when they were saying all along that a gentle walk was plenty of exercise for them?
They know everything.
Yeah, grandparents, yeah.
But there's also variation based on what health outcome you're actually targeting. So if we look at dementia prevention specifically, research says like 9,800 steps, I think it is the optimum amount for trying to lower that dementia risk by about half. But if you're looking at cardiovascular health and lowering cardiovascular disease risk, then those benefits continue for more steps. So 10,000 to 13,000 steps still show benefits.
So 10,000 wasn't completely arbitrary then from a health perspective. It just happened to land in a reasonable zone for certain populations and certain outcomes.
Precisely. So it was based on what was known, and it still remains a good average figure. It's just that as more research has become published, like we know the daily step target should be far more individual than we maybe previously thought.
Which is really interesting, isn't it? And it connects with this idea then that people have wildly different step counts from their daily lives, right? So someone working in retail is going to hit 15,000 steps a day without trying, while someone like me, maybe who works at a desk, is going to struggle, I don't know, to reach 2,000 or 3,000 steps.
Yeah, and that really brings us to why this matters, because if you look at the research, and this won't surprise anybody, that the biggest health gains come from moving from a sedentary position to someone who becomes more moderately active. So if you picture that as a curve, it's going to go up quite steeply, isn't it? Because you start off doing nothing and then you are increasing to doing something. But then, so let's say you've gone from 2,000 steps to 5,000 steps. That's a massive increase and you get big health improvements. If you then go from 5,000 to 8,000, you get some more benefits, maybe not quite as much. But from 10,000 to 15, there might be an extra benefit, but it's going to be relatively small. So it's all about getting going and just keeping an eye on it, but not necessarily just aiming for that arbitrary single figure.
So, okay, so let's get this, maybe let's zoom in a little bit, make it a bit more practical for, real people. Because we all know someone who's deeply obsessed with their step count versus the whole person, the person maybe that thinks the whole thing is nonsense.
It's a great point. I mean, we know it's important. So for older adults, as an example, taking as few as, I think, 6,000 steps per day, it's associated with this massive reduction in mortality risk. So we know even a very small increases in daily steps provide dramatic effects. So the skepticism is understandable, but we know the science is there, but it's just not always as big a jump as people necessarily think it needs to be.
Which makes sense when you think about biology. Older people might have mobility limitations, joint issues, and naturally just move more slowly. So expecting a 70-year-old to hit the same target as a 30-year-old is just a bit silly.
Well, it is, until you try telling it to, the mum who's in that sort of competitive step counting group with her friends from aqua aerobics, and they've got the WhatsApp group, which is where they screenshot their step count. It feels a bit it can be a bit intense, maybe more intense in our fantasy football league.
Oh, nothing's more intense than that.
It does get intense.
Yeah, I mean, you do touch on something important, and I'm not talking about the fantasy football league.
That is important.
It is important, but I'm talking about motivation. So, like the 10,000 step goal, like regardless of its origin, it provides this kind of clear target that people can understand and work towards. And sometimes, having a simple, memorable number, it is more valuable and more achievable than a complex, personalised recommendation.
Even if it's not scientifically perfect.
Even then, it can be demotivating for some, though. So if you think of that 10,000 figure, if you're an individual with chronic conditions, you might average anywhere between 1,000 and 9,000 steps per day. So it's a massive window of variation. So you imagine someone at the lower end of that scale trying to strive for 10,000 steps a day. It can feel impossible and discouraging when it might be actually a long way from what they actually need. So we do need to be careful.
Yeah, because it's easy to not do something because you think, I can't hit that goal, right? That target. So why bother?
Exactly. And as I touched on earlier, a small number of steps can make a big difference. We're talking 2,000 to 3,000 additional steps per day. It can provide meaningful health improvements, even, as I say, for those groups with chronic conditions. So the message to everybody, every demographic group is some is better. That's the crucial message. Some kind of increase, some improvement is better.
And there's also physical variations to consider. We're all different heights, leg length affects step frequency. And a study found that for moderate intensity walking, people who are 5 foot tall might take 111 steps per minute, while someone who's 6'6" might only take, say, 85.
So, and also I find I have a shorter step if I wear barefoot shoes. Just putting that out there. So maybe a universal step count or a step target doesn't account for someone's height and also doesn't account for someone's build, right? So different people, different heights, different builds are going to get different cardiovascular workouts, I suppose, based on how much they walk.
Yeah, and the other thing is intensity, because the one thing we haven't touched on yet is that not all steps are created equally.
But you've not said that before.
I know.
That's a T-shirt slogan if ever I heard one.
So step quality, meaning intensity, is as important as quantity. So if you think about walking 100 steps per minute for 30 minutes or 50 steps per minute for 60 minutes, it's the same steps, right? But the faster pace will provide additional benefits.
So, coming back to what you were saying earlier, shuffling around your house at midnight to hit the 10,000 steps isn't the same then as actually walking briskly.
No, exactly. And there was a study in 2024, and it found that people engaging in at least 15 minutes of what they call fast walking daily, they experience nearly 20% decreased mortality risk. So that intensity does matter.
Which explains why my steps that mostly involve walking from room to room while I'm working from home don't quite give me the same glow as when I actually go for a good walk around the block.
Shocking.
Shocking.
So practically speaking then, what should we actually do, right? Because I think most people hearing this will be confused about what their target should actually be.
Yeah, so our advice would always be try and start by understanding your current activity level. So if you track it for a week and see where you actually are, so it might be 1,000 steps a day, it might be 3,000 steps a day, it might be 4 steps a day, probably a few more than that. But whatever that number, that's the start point, and then gradually increase it by 1,000 or 2,000 steps per day until you reach a number that feels right. And I guarantee you'll feel better. You'll start to find what is your kind of personally appropriate target, and that will start to become clear in your mind and in your body.
And so what is personally appropriate?
So I guess if we look at it as a rule of thumb, we can take most adults under 60, we're looking at between 7,000 and 10,000 steps per day. For adults over 60, a little bit less, 6,000 to 8,000 steps per day. For people with chronic conditions, getting to 4,000 or 5,000 steps can be really meaningful in terms of health benefits.
Yeah, that's really, really good. And the other thing, of course, to throw into this is life happens, right? So some days you're going to hit your target because you got lost in IKEA, and it takes you 4 days to get out. Other times you might just hit the 2,000 steps a day because you're ill or you're busy or, we live in England. It does rain a lot and we might not be bothered to go outside.
No, totally. And, that routine matters. So there was a really important piece of research that came out that it showed that 8,000 steps or more on just 1 to 2 days a week provide the mortality benefits compared to someone constantly having far less. So it just showed that the kind of the weekend warrior approach isn't always ideal, but it's still better than nothing.
And what about people that aren't necessarily doing steps, but they're doing other forms of exercise like cycling or swimming? Should they still care about steps?
Yeah, such an important question because, of course, steps are only one metric of physical activity, right? So, like health guidelines typically recommend 150 minutes. What's that? 2.5 hours of like moderately intensive aerobic activity per week. But that can come from any form of movement. So steps, they do provide an easy to track method, but of course it's not a complete picture.
Yeah, I mean, I always say to people, the best exercise that you should do is one that you will actually do, right?
Exactly. So whether that's walking or cycling or swimming or dancing around the kitchen like I do, movement's
Some
movement.
things I don't need to see or picture in my mind, if I'm honest with you.
Okay, so we've learnt that 10,000 steps came from marketing, that research suggests lower numbers are often sufficient and that individual variation matters. But I'm curious, like, how this connects to other health concepts when we think about how does step count affect sleep?
Yeah, massively so. So if you look at like the realities of it, so a higher like daily step count, it's directly associated with better sleep quality, but also reduced time to fall asleep and more time in deep sleep phase. So that relationship works both ways too. So better sleep leads to more energy for activity the next day, but more energy and activity leads to better sleep.
Well, it's not a surprise, right? Because everything's connected. So your movement affects your sleep, and your sleep affects your mood, and that affects your motivation to do you know what I mean? It all works together.
Yeah, and there's definitely the mental health component. That study we mentioned earlier found a 22% reduction in depression risk at 7,000 steps compared to 2,000 steps. I mean, that's huge, that's substantial.
It is. It's massive. And the whole thing is, it's a reminder that all of these health behaviours, they're not isolated. So step count's a really rough indicator for overall activity level, but that influences everything. It influences health and general well-being.
Although, let's be honest, we've all had those days, haven't we, where we've checked our step count and we either did one or two emotions. We either feel really smug or we kind of feel really guilty. But all of this is based on a number invented by a marketing team in 1964. And we're complicit in this. Well, is it madness? But we're complicit in it, right?
True, but maybe the real value isn't the specific number, but the awareness it creates. Like before fitness trackers, I guess I had no idea how little I actually moved on some days.
Yeah, I totally agree. It is so important to have that target. And the thing about tracking is it creates awareness, doesn't it? Which it can motivate and it can change your behaviour. So whether that goal is 7,000 steps or 10,000 steps, that's less important than having a goal in the first place that actually gets you off the sofa.
So to answer our original question, why do we chase 10,000 steps a day?
So we chase it because a clever marketing campaign back in 1964 gave us this memorable round number that happened to pretty much align well with health benefits uncovered decades later. So 10,000 steps as a daily target is not wrong, it's just not universally right either.
And because the Japanese character for 10,000 looks like a person walking, which is simultaneously the most charming and delightful, but also the most absurd reason for a global health recommendation I think I've heard for a while.
So that's why 10,000 steps became the magic number. And more importantly, you now know that the actual magic happens at a much lower step count than you thought. The biggest gains come from simply moving, from sedentary to moderately active.
Exactly, and the key point is some movement is infinitely better than none. So whether you hit 5,000 steps or 10,000 steps, that matters less than constantly or consistently trying to move more than you did before. So the best step count is the one that's sustainable for your life, your body, and your circumstances.
And maybe maybe we can all sort of become less obsessive about checking our step count at 11 o'clock at night.
Although your midnight living room laps do technically count. That's it for this week. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, as we're going to be unpacking the science behind everyday questions each week. And tell us in the comments what questions you'd like us to explore. Thanks for geeking out with us. But for now, that's it from me.
That's it from me.
And that's it from me.
Bye.